little unexpected for me. I just thought it was going to be like a crowd of 50 people. My gosh. I mean, Mike, you did a great job here pulling this all together. Thank you. So, you know what this says to me? You're ready to win. I can see it. You are ready to win. So Maya Angelou, you know, she's an author, an English teacher. I have to start with an author. Said, each time a woman stands up for herself, without knowing it possibly, without claiming it, she stands up for all women. It took courage to tell your story when you met Joe, but you didn't stop there. You dedicated yourself to others and started one of the, the largest It's On Us programs here at the University of Missouri. So this mission to end violence and assault against women and on our college campuses is one that is incredibly close to Joe's heart, as many of you may know. So I want to thank you for your kind words and your courage. And so thanks for being here today.
Thank you for being here.
So I wanted to start by telling you a little bit about myself. Because most of you know me as Second Lady, or Joe's spouse, but you probably don't know much more than that, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, see, some people are like, yeah, who are you? So, I grew up the oldest of 5 daughters in a suburb outside of Philly. Anybody here from Philly? Yay, love that. Okay, somebody in the back too. And when I dreamed of what my life would become, I knew that I wanted 2 things. I wanted a marriage like my parents had, that was strong and loving and full of laughter, and I wanted a career. So I set out to find those 2 things, but my path was a bit meandering. So it was the 70s when I met Joe. It was Vietnam. Some of you may remember Vietnam. Love beads, equal rights. I wore my hair down to the middle of my waist, and so did most of the men I dated. So one day, I was asked out on a date just out of the blue. And that evening, a handsome young senator showed up at my door. So remember, this was the 70s. You know, most of the guys I dated had clogs and, bell bottoms, tie-dye shirts. A couple of you are shaking your heads. So he shows up, I opened the door. I took one look at his perfect suit and his leather loafers, and I thought, thank God it's only one date. Well, one date eventually turned into a marriage proposal, and if I'm being completely honest, it was 5 proposals, because this was really not part of my plan. And more than that, it wasn't just my heart that was on the line. And as many of you may know, and Joe was elected to the Senate. He was only 29 years old. It's so hard to believe. And he had to actually wait a month till he was 30, until he was eligible to be sworn into the Senate. But Joe was in his office in Washington, newly elected. He was hiring staff. And he got a call from the Delaware State Troopers who said to him, your family has been in an accident, and his wife Nelia and his daughter Naomi were killed, and his sons, our sons, Bo and Hunter, were seriously injured. And after all that they had lost, I knew that if I said yes to that marriage proposal, that it had to be forever. Because here were these 2 little boys when I met them, when they were 7 and 8, and I knew that they had lost one mother, through tragedy, and they couldn't lose another one through divorce. So I had to be absolutely positive. But eventually I realized that my fears, my love for them outweighed my fears, and I eventually said yes. And all these years later, I'm so proud of the life that we built together with our daughter Ashley. And actually, this year, I can't even believe it, it'll be 43 years. So, a lifetime. So I've been an English and writing teacher for now, gosh, I think 35 years. And in my classes, actually I took this semester off, but that's another story. But in my classes, we talk about our stories. So those of you who are students in the room, in your English class you talk about stories and how they shape our identity, and they can isolate us and make us afraid. They can divide us and make us angry, and even inspire us to the kind of violence that we've seen, over these past few years. But stories can help us to rise to kindness as well. And they can remind us that our differences are precious, and that our similarities are infinite. That our community, our country, is capable of beautiful and powerful things. And I think in these last few years we've tended to forget that. We feel so burdened by what we feel every day, the negativity. And so these past few years, it's hard not to focus on the things that divide us. We all feel it, don't we? The hatred, the bigotry, the marching through the streets. Remember Charlottesville, torches in hand? But we have other stories to tell as well, and I'd like to share one of mine. So a few years ago, I had to tell my class that I would miss the next session for personal reasons. Now, my students have a lot of shining qualities, but boundaries are not one of them. So they immediately began shouting, Dr. P, where are you going? Well, my sister Jan was having a stem cell transplant, the first of her cancer treatments, and she was going to be isolated in a hospital room for over 6 weeks. And I tried to explain it to my class with as much composure as I could muster, but the words caught in my throat. I could hear my voice crack. So I turned around and I faced the whiteboard behind me, hoping to sort of gather my emotions. And as I turned back around, the entire class was standing, and they lined up to give me a hug, one by one. And that act of kindness, that act of community, gave me the strength to keep going. It saved me when I didn't even realize how much I was struggling. And in a way, that act of community saved my sister Jan too. She's built her career as a waitress. And when she got sick, she didn't have the insurance to cover her treatments. And it was only because of the Affordable Care Act that she was able to find a plan that she could afford. That made it possible for her to get covered, even though she had a pre-existing condition.
Yes.
It's easy to take for granted just how much changed when we passed the ACA. 20 million more people got covered. Pre-existing conditions became protected. And it's not an exaggeration to say that this law saved my sister's life. But it's also easy to forget how difficult it was to get that law passed. The fact is, that law was only passed by a handful of votes. And so President Obama said to Joe, you've got to get up there to Capitol Hill And you've got to talk to the Republicans and talk to the Democrats. And we have to get this passed. And they did. And anyone can tell you what they want to do. But Joe can tell you what he's already done and will continue to do. He has spent his entire career bringing people together, building bridges, and actually delivering on the promises that he's made. So when he says he's going to pay teachers what they deserve, or invest in 21st century job training, or strengthen Social Security, you can believe him. Because he's won these battles before, and he'll do it again. He knows how to lead us into the future, not drag us back to the past. And honestly, I cannot wait to get to that future. So I'm going to take you there. So I want you to picture that it's 2021. It's a beautiful morning. Well, not like this morning. I just came from Kansas City, and it was pouring. Just absolutely pouring. Okay, so you wake up and you're sipping your morning coffee. You pick up the morning paper and the headline isn't about some late night tweet storm. It's about our children who will benefit from universal pre-kindergarten. You turn on the television. I know, I'm so happy for that as an educator. You turn on the television like I always do to get the weather, and the anchors aren't talking about how we're on the brink of some ill-advised war. Instead, they're talking about how we're going to build on the Affordable Care Act with a public option and bringing down the cost of prescription drug prices. And those TV anchors are reporting that finally, someone is standing up to the NRA and keeping our... And when they cut to the President of the United States, you don't turn the channel. The mute button, she said.
Exactly.
You call in your kids from the other room because you want them to hear what the President of the United States has to say. Commander-in-Chief you can trust. A leader who brings people together instead of tearing families apart like we've seen at our southern border. A president that you can feel proud of, who believes that our best days are ahead of us. And that's my husband, Joe Biden. 4 more years of a Donald Trump presidency. Fundamentally change the character of our nation and how our allies view us. Joe is going to win in places we need, like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Ohio, Michigan, and right here in Missouri. He's going to build a winning coalition that actually looks like America, rural and urban. Asians, Latinos, whites, and African Americans, people of all generations, Democrats, independents, and yes, Republicans. And he Joe a real Democrat at the top of our ticket.
Thank you.
Democrats in the most liberal cities and the most conservative ones will be able to run with him and not from him. Joe can get us to the future we want, but we cannot do it without you. People often come up to me and say, Jill, I hate what I see on the television. I hate feeling bad and negative every day. But I don't want this. I'm just one person. What can I do? Well, the answer is all around us in this room. In every person who cares to keep on fighting. And what can one person do? Well, one phone call can change a mind. One conversation can sway a vote. One ballot can win an election. Every action we take, everything we do becomes a part of something bigger than ourselves. It only takes one person to stand up for what's right. So will you be that person? Will you stand up now? Will you vote for my husband, Joe Biden? Stand up, let's take this together. Thank you. So I want to thank you all. I want to thank you all for your faith in an idea that's bigger than any one of us. And that is that we can build a better nation if we do this together. Thank you, Missouri. Thank you.